Dave Workman. He is with the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, and he's written some interesting comments on this election as well. Dave, welcome into the program.
Well, Mark, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So you've seen all the predictions of gloom and doom from the media and the left over the past 3 or 4 days that this thing's all but over with. And then 3 polls come out yesterday that show Trump ahead in Ohio and Pennsylvania, or Ohio and Florida, and almost tied in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I'm always leery about polls. The only poll that really counts is on Election Day. And being a card-carrying member of the Fourth Estate, yes, I do have a degree in journalism, and that's really what I do for a living. It stuns me when you see these polls that come out that say Hillary up by 1 or Hillary up by 2, and then the left-leaning mainstream media is ready to declare the election over and done with. When Trump's ahead, it's always, some of these polls aren't really accurate. And I sit back and I don't have to wonder a lot which candidate many of my colleagues, our colleagues, are in the bag for.
Well, the media bias is so obvious some days that it slaps you in the face. Yesterday or the day before, the media was trumpeting a picture from a Trump rally where somebody was holding up a sign that had Hillary Clinton's face on it and a target drawn over it, right? So as somehow indicating they were advocating violence against her. And then you have, on the other hand, the Vice President of the United States comes out and advocates violence against Donald Trump, that he'd like to beat him up himself. Can you imagine if Donald Trump had said the same thing about Joe Biden, how that would have been handled in the media? But they just laughed it off because crazy Uncle Joe said it. Yeah,
and unfortunately, Trump immediately responded, which I wish he wouldn't do stuff like this.
Yeah.
He said, hey, I'll meet him anywhere, or, whatever it was he said. Presidential politics might have gotten that far back when Andy Jackson was running. But, we're the 21st century now, and you don't meet people for duels. You take them apart verbally. And Trump has shown that he can do that in the primary debates. He's the last man standing. But I don't know that really helps anybody right now, and especially it detracts from the real issue, which you said is the Supreme Court. Whatever happens, whoever wins this election is going to determine the course not only of the Supreme Court, but the federal courts for the next 25, 30 years perhaps. And that's a really big issue.
Yeah, it can't be underscored enough. Even in the debates where the issue has come up, at least the candidates were honest enough to say the opposite directions they were heading on the Supreme Court. And I don't know that liberals pay any attention or care, but Hillary Clinton will have a litmus test for her candidates. And that litmus test will be you have to agree to change the interpretation of the Second Amendment, and you have to agree to overturn Citizens United. She's got several court cases that she's zeroed in on that we know exactly what she's going to do and the kind of candidates she's going to pick. And that's been my argument all along to these people who are never Trumpers or claiming they're not going to vote or they're going to vote third party. I'm like, that you might as well take your ballot and get the paper version of it so that you can roll it up and light it and smoke it, because you're throwing away your vote if you don't vote for the other choice other than Hillary Clinton.
Well, I think that's certainly an important consideration, especially where the Second Amendment is concerned.
Right.
We won, we being gun owners, we won the Heller ruling in 2008, subsequently the McDonald v. City of Chicago ruling in 2010. Those were very significant because they accurately portrayed the Second Amendment as protecting an individual's civil right. There are so many people on the left who would very much like to reverse that because they just don't like those rotten old guns. So what they're not getting is that if they make it so easy to throw away one of our fundamental civil rights in the Bill of Rights, they open the door to attacks on, say, the First Amendment, the Fourth, Fifth, Sixth Amendments. I mean, where are these people coming from? They're not thinking outside the box very far. And that really disturbs me as a journalist. You know, you and I both make our living thanks to the First Amendment.
Right.
We have to be very protective of that. The Second Amendment, it's our right to keep and bear arms, and many say it's the cornerstone of the Bill of Rights. You want to throw that away? Well, not so fast, because then you start worrying about habeas corpus, due process. All of that stuff is part of the Bill of Rights, and it's not a smorgasbord. You just can't pick and choose what you want. That's a 10-course meal, and you get it all.
I like that. We're talking to David Workman. He is with the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. And I've had Alan Gottlieb on the show before in the past, but remind my listeners of what your organization's all about.
Well, the Citizens Committee is a grassroots gun rights organization. I'm the communications director for them, as well as the senior editor of a publication called The Gun Mag, which used to be Gun Week, and that is owned by the Second Amendment Foundation, which is the sister organization. And I've always just considered myself a journalist with kind of a strange job and an interesting beat, I should say. I write about guns. I write about all facets of guns, politics, gun tests, all kinds of stuff. And the Citizens Committee has been around for decades. They don't get nearly the publicity that some of the other organizations do, and maybe that's okay because they like to work behind the scenes and help support local and state groups who are really the boots on the ground. They do the work, and we're just there in kind of a supporting role.
Well, people can certainly Google the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms, the website ccrkba.org. Dave Workman, thanks for your time today.
My pleasure. Nice chatting with you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of time. Want to get Dave on and get his thoughts on this Supreme Court issue, which is at the forefront of this election. There's just no doubt about it. All right.